morning, everybody. My name is Liz Helton, and thank you for joining us for this month's installment of Just Ask Julia, where we share tips, and insights to help you advance your career. And this month, we are talking about a topic that is very tactical and one of the most commonly faced things that we see our clients have struggles with. And we are talking about the notes that get you noticed. These are messages, letters, thank you notes, follow-ups that really define your job search. They're not the things you think of immediately when you think of an application, right? Apart from a cover letter, which we will also get into, but they're the things that happen kind of in between. But they're those little stressors that make us bang our heads against the keyboard and say, oh my gosh, how do I say exactly the perfect thing at exactly the right time to come across exactly perfectly when someone's trying to get to know me? And we're going to get into it today to help give you some tactical insight, tactical resources to be able to write these messages more effectively. So let's get started. Why do these messages matter? This communication, clear, confident messaging, isn't just a skill, it's an investment in your credibility. These are the moments where people who are sitting on the other side of the desk, the hiring managers, recruiters, people in your network really get to see how you communicate naturally, right? This is how you continue through a conversation on paper from what maybe was just said in an interview, or how it might even be your first impression, right? An introduction, for instance, is likely the first thing that someone's going to read before they look at your resume, before they look at a cover letter, before they even get to your LinkedIn profile. So these messages absolutely matter. When we talk about cover letters, 83% of hiring managers still say they read those cover letters, even when they're an optional add-on to your application. Now, is it the first thing that people are going to read? Absolutely not. Is it the second? Nope. Is it going to be the thing that gets you in the door? In a lot of cases, no. And we're going to talk about today when it's appropriate to send those cover letters, when it's necessary, when it can be advantageous. But what hiring managers are continuing to tell us is that the way that you message your application still matters. And what cover letters can do is kind of fill in some of those gaps. Now, when hiring managers and decision makers are looking at applications, one of the things that does stick into their mind is this person going to be effective when I'm talking to them, right? Is this going to be somebody who I can have those day-to-day conversations with, hop onto a Slack, correspond via email? Or is that going to be someone who I can correspond with really effectively? Miscommunication actually costs US businesses over $12,000 per employee per year. That's an insane number in time and resources. And so being able to effectively communicate can really impact a business's bottom line. And so it's a skill that doesn't just help your job search, it helps you as a professional and excel in how you communicate in general. Every message you send is going to tell a story, right? It's going to give off more than just the words you say. It's going to depict your confidence, right? It's going to show how steady, how clear, how to the point you can be, how sure-footed you are in your messaging within your job search. It's going to demonstrate your professionalism. As much as we hate getting ghosted as candidates, the other side of the desk, those hiring managers are really looking for how are you responding? How are you communicating in those in-between moments? And it reflects reliability, it reflects professionalism, and it shows, how your word choice and structure really matter in the way that you collaborate, right? These messages are also the best indication of your attention to detail. Most of us, by the time we are knee deep in a job search, have a resume that we feel very confident we have combed through top to bottom, had a friend look at, printed out, highlighted, read it from the bottom up. We don't necessarily think about that in these messages, right? So that attention to detail can really shine through in these in-between moments. So things like correctly spelling someone's name, clean formatting, really can show, hey, you can trust me when the details count, right? And these are actually the details that are going to get read more than in a resume, right? When we read a resume, we don't read it top to bottom, right? As hiring managers, as decision makers, candidates do. They're scouring their resume to make sure every comma is placed in exactly the right way, as they should. But somebody sitting on the other side of the desk isn't necessarily scrolling through a resume top to bottom. However, they are going to read that email from start to finish, right? So that's where actually those typos and misprints actually are going to be more detrimental to your job search. These messages are also the best indicator of your emotional intelligence, right? It doesn't just convey information, it's there to kind of connect and carry through a story, right? When you're matching your tone to the moment, taking what just happened in an interview, for instance, and carrying that into your next email, it's going to build on that relationship. And it's also going to kind of help your personality show through a little bit more than the robotics of a accomplished X is measured by Y by doing Z. This is where your voice gets to shine through. And that's what we want to bring to light in all of these messages that you're sending. So why is it so hard? Writing can be really terrible. And that's coming from a writer. It's hard to talk about yourself. It's hard to get into in the moment and stress about how you're trying to sound. Are you professional but personal? Are you clear but not cold? Confident but not braggy? Oh my gosh, there's so many different ways to look at it and say, am I doing this right? Well, the good news is that you don't need to sound perfect, right? You just need to get something out on paper first, right? Or keyboard first. And with that, we've got some structure that we're going to talk about today to really help you make sure that you are including the things you need to include, thinning out the things that are overkill, overreach, unnecessary, so that you can really tailor in and get to the heart of what you're trying to say a little bit better. But we do recognize that this isn't a one stop, okay, great, my emails are going to be perfect from now on. This is a practice that can take a lot of time. And what I'm here to show you today are some things that can really help improve your messaging and make you come across a bit more confidently across all of the messages that you send. So we look at this through what we call the 4 elements of effective writing, right? So we're going to get into each of these, but first and foremost, I want you to really know your intent every time you go to send a message. Why are you reaching out, right? And being able to state it clearly, right? For both yourself and the person on the other side of that keyboard. Context, right? Needs to be relevant, right? Your tone, calm, confident, human, and then of course, clarity. Very to the point action items, right? We want to know that we know what the next step is. We don't want to leave anybody asking why or how or huh. So we're going to get into how to make sure that this is very effective and that your intention, your context, your tone, and your clarity are all in lockstep with your goals. So why are you writing and why it matters right now? This is your intent. Right? So I want you to really identify your goal before you write. Are you informing? Are you requesting? Are you thanking? Are you reconnecting? Right? This is the easy part. You know why you need to open up a new email, right? From that moment, okay, I'm sticking to the point. I've got to focus in on asking for that introduction, on sending that thank you note, on following up with a connection, right? Aligning your tone to purpose, right? If you're curious for an outreach, appreciative thank yous or calm follow-ups, I want you to really align with that intention and say, okay, I need to follow through in everything that I'm working through. And we're going to talk about tone and specific words that you can use to really back up your intention, right? Get to the point real early. I'm reaching out because stating that intent right out of the gate is going to be really critical. And then clear about next steps, right? Make it as easy as possible for the recipient to act on the thing that you're reaching out with. So instead of saying, hey, I just wanted to reach out and see if maybe you had a few updates. Oh, that sounds so wishy-washy. That sounds so like, I'm really hesitant to end up in your inbox, but here I am because I have to cross this off my list. Instead, I want you to stand 10 toes down and say, hey, I wanted to follow up on our conversation about the marketing manager role. Clear, to the point. We're not like, hey, hello. No, we're fully getting into someone's inbox and saying, hey, this is why I'm here. This is what I'm reaching out for. Don't make them feel like they have to pat you on the head and say, hey, it's okay. It's okay, hon. We're confident in our messaging, and we are clear with our intention. So next, context. Why are you reaching out to this person right now? Maybe you need to remind them of your connection. Hey, we met at that conference last January, or Alex suggested that I reach out to you regarding, right? You're still getting to that point. You're still, this is giving the context clue of why you're in their inbox, and then getting to that point, right? Anchor to the moment. So you're really gonna reference a specific role, a topic, a recent event. Really making sure that what you're saying is going to say, okay, yep, I know why we're about to have a conversation. You don't want to make the person on the other side guess, right? Offer a line of framing, or one line of framing. Context sets the stage for your ask. It turns cold outreach into warm communication, right? So instead of saying, hey, would you be open to a conversation? You can try, you might remember we spoke last month about Summit's brand refresh. I wanted to follow up on your hiring timeline, right? This gives clues around, hey, this is what we said, this is where we're at, and nope, I did not forget. I'm following up and following through, right? And you don't need to give the full backstory. You don't need to feel like you need to rehash an entire conversation, or if you're asking for an introduction, you don't need to give them every detail of, why you're making a change, or every single thing that's been going on. Those can happen in your next conversation, right? This is your moment to, get to the point, make an ask. When we're writing an email, it doesn't need to be every single detail when it comes to these messages, right? This is to keep the wheels turning, right? And so sometimes we overstate, we overdo it. And so really making sure that we are getting to the point and staying on the point is important in terms of the context of a message, of an email. When it comes to tone, this is where we get into like staying away from the mousiness, right? We don't need to feel like we are just dipping our toes in, right? We're here. We're here to get some stuff done. We got to be calm, we got to be confident, and we got to be human. These are my absolute get rid of them words that I constantly see in emails and consistently show a lack of confidence. If you see the word just in your emails, I just want to follow up. Cut it. Just is a filler word that makes you feel like you are asking for permission to send something when it's already there, right? I'm following up. It's the same thing, but with a bit more firmness, right? Sorry. Oh, I know that sometimes there is a time and place for sorry, but sorry is not meant to, sorry to bother you. We are not inconveniencing people here, right? Sorry should be reserved for those moments when you truly have screwed up and you are expressing sorrow, right? So instead, you're going to say, hey, when you have a moment, it's okay to end up in somebody's inbox. We're not inconveniences here. I was wondering if this one is borderline, right? I was wondering if you had a moment, right? I was wondering if you would be able to. I'm reaching out to see if you would be a better option there, right? I hope this isn't a bother. We're not Eeyore, no bothers, right? So thank you for taking the time. We are not asking for forgiveness just because we are in somebody's inbox. People want to help, but they need to know how. This is not an inconvenience. If it's an inconvenience, they're just going to ignore it or pass on it or move on. And we oftentimes, when we get into the justs and sorries and oh, I hope I'm not a bothers, is because we feel like we are that inconvenience, are taking up a space that we aren't meant to take up. But I promise you, you are meant to take up that space and you don't need to ask permission to do it. You want to be thankful, right? And appreciative, and to really dig into the fact that this person is helping you. And it's much more effective to like praise and thank and acknowledge the value of their time than to put into that person's head that you're taking up space for them. If you say, I hope this isn't a bother, that puts into someone's head like, hey, this is a bother. When in reality, like, thank you so much. Thank you in advance for your time. That shows like, yeah, this is time that I am taking, and they do recognize that. So it's just the frame of reference, and we want to put that positivity spin on it. No Eeyores. Okay, so some common things to avoid with this. Like I said, over explaining. I want you to go back through your emails and just tighten it out. If you feel like, hey, this isn't going to get me down the line, cut it out, right? That apologetic tone, right? Generic notes. We want to add specifics, right? And being overly polished, right? It's okay to have some, shorthand, some commonality, some flow. Like I said a moment ago, you want to keep the tone of your message going. If this is the first time you're reaching out to someone, and we'll into introductions shortly, that's a little bit more of a formal tone than if you've been corresponding with them over the course of a couple of weeks, right? If you've had a couple of meetings with somebody, right? If you've started the conversation. These are the messages that continue a conversation in a lot of cases, right? It's in that middle point where you want to really be keeping the dialogue going, right? You want to launch with those intros and those cover letters. This is a launching point. But by the time you get into your thank yous, your follow-ups, that's a continuation. And so you really want to keep that tone in line with where you're at in your dialogue. And then, of course, clarity. Make it as easy for them as possible. We're leading with our purpose. Like I said, we're using plain language. So skip the jargon or long intros. You don't need to, in a cover letter, for example, come up with like the cutesy metaphor. I remember back in like 2008, 2009 timeframe, it was very in vogue with a cover letter to create this like storyline through of like, I don't know, the visual I always come to is like, I've always been a big advocate for dogs, or something like something completely out of left field, because the thought at the time was, we got to capture their attention. We have to make them see me and have me stand out. Well, in reality, that was completely ineffective, because what the person sitting on the other side of the desk would look at is they would say, well, I need to just get to the point. I have 100 other applications to look at. They're not reading that. They want to know, how do you relate to this position? Why are you excited about the position? And how does your experience connect the dots to what they need, right? We got to get to the point, and we need to do it in a way that lets them know, you're writing to me, right? Every message you send needs to say, this is very clearly written for me, right? And then getting into that, to that very visible ask. Don't bury the request, put it right up there at the top. So keeping it clear, keeping it, making it easy for them, can look, instead of, let me know if you have some time soon, just sometime in the future. If you're available next week, I'd love to schedule a 15-minute chat. It can be that specific, right? And yes, you may ask, well, what if they're not available? Well, then we tackle that once we get there, right? But being able to put some parameters around your ask and making it easy to respond to is going to generate a faster response than something that's open-ended and wishy-washy. All right, so I want to get into the 4 different types of notes, and we want to go through kind of the life cycle of the messages that you're going to send throughout your job search. And introductions are one of the first things that you may be asking for. I'm a big proponent, especially in 2025, when the job market is as just absolutely crazy as it is right now, that asking for introductions is the most critical step that you can take in your job search, because it is the people and your network that are going to help move the needle for you faster than easy apply, click and submit, push out 50 applications a day. People are going to help you way more than robots, right? But you need to be able to be really effective in that ask. So as we look here, Jamie is asking Taylor for an introduction to Morgan Lee at Summit Strategies. You can see here, I see that you're connected to Morgan Lee, like right there. There is that context. Why this person? Why now? And I'd love to ask her a few questions about her experience leading brand strategy, and then digging into why. I'm exploring marketing leadership roles in the Bay Area, and I'm curious how others have navigated that transition. You see that this person, Morgan Lee, has made a similar jump than you have, and Taylor has a connection to her. All right. If you're open to making an introduction, I'd be happy to send a short blurb that you can forward to make it easy. Really appreciate your connections, right? So keeping it direct, keeping it to the point, but also I'm going to make it as easy for you as possible. And I know what our next step is. If you say yes to this, I'm going to send you that blurb, right? I like to wait on sending the blurb until somebody agrees, because then you're not shoving everything in their inbox, and it gives you a little bit of a context clue around where things are in motion. If you said, hey, if you're open to it, here's a blurb, that gives Taylor the ability to say, yeah, I'll get to that, right? Versus, yeah, please send me that blurb. And then that's another point of contact between the two of you. So what does that blurb look like? Because that's the next question that people will always ask me is, what do I even send them? Let's take a look. Make it as easy as possible. Something that Taylor can absolutely drag and drop into her email to Morgan. Hey, Morgan, I wanted to introduce you to Jamie Rivera, marketing leader I worked with at North Peak Creative. Jamie's been leading brand and client marketing teams in SaaS and is exploring her next leadership move. She's curious about how companies like Summit Strategies are approaching brand and growth and team development. If you're open to a short conversation, I know she'd really appreciate your perspective. It's clear, it's tight, it's to the point, and you've just made it so easy for Taylor to make that introduction and not to stress about, oh my gosh, what do I say about Jamie? We worked together so long ago. I have no idea what she's up to now, right? We want Taylor to have as easy a time as possible to make that intro, to make that ask. So when we get into the next stage of it, you're going to think cover letters, and I'm going to get into the when and why and all of that on cover letters, but I want to talk about cover letters first. Cover letters are, well, they're a tricky breed that don't seem to want to go away. I have a lot of people that say, like, I don't look at that. This isn't something that, like, I'm not going to spend time on a cover letter. I'm just going to send out this application. There's a time and place for cover letters, but when it comes to an effective cover letter, it is not the pre-applicant tracking system cover letter or days of yore where you would be like printing out your cover letter, printing out your resume, and mailing it off, right? The intention behind a cover letter has changed, right? So when we look at a cover letter now, I want you to look at it as a way to tie together your background with the role. Oftentimes when I'm working with a writing client, they say, hey, I need a cover letter template. Can we make a cover letter template? And I get really itchy when somebody uses the big T word when it comes to cover letters, because there isn't really such a thing as a cover letter template anymore, because every note should be so specific that the recipient knows you are talking to them. So as we take a look at this, you can see right out of the gate, when I read your posting for the director of marketing at Summit Strategies, one line immediately stood out. This paragraph right here is so clear. There is no possible way you are dragging and dropping the majority of this in here. Sure, if you had a template for this, when I read your posting for blank, one line stood out, blank. and then blank, because that intersection between strategy, storytelling, and measurable growth has been the through line of my career. You're going to have to change the majority of that. This is not templated. Whoever's reading that can easily see this is directed to me currently. This middle section in my current role as blah, 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 I've led brand teams, da, 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 da. Okay, that statement, sure, could be templated. But then we get into what excites me about Summit's opportunity and leadership approach is the focus on translating complex technology into da, da, da. And that's where I do my best work. You can see here that we have just created a sandwich that directly puts this Summit role right in the middle of this, right? So overwhelmingly, whoever is reading this knows that the person who has written it, that Jamie has written this directly to Dana. And Dana's looking at this and saying, I know what this person is about. I see how we connect the dots, right? And then kind of bringing it together at the end. I'd love the opportunity to discuss how I can help Summit strengthen the bridge between blah, 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 blah. And of course, you would round this out with, attached is my resume. I am available at your earliest convenience. But when we look at this cover letter, it's not a total regurgitation of the person's background. They have your resume. They have those bullet points. You don't need to say every single thing, well, first I was at this company, later at this company. That's a bio, right? Your cover letter should really tie together. Why are you excited, relevant, and the best candidate for this position? When is it even necessary to send? Okay. When the application asks for one, you need to send one. That's if you see that on there, if it says, send a cover letter and a resume, do not pass go, you're writing a cover letter. If you're genuinely excited for the role, if this is a role that you're like, this is the thing I want to talk about. I am so fired up about the opportunity to work at this company. Put that enthusiasm on paper, right? This isn't a car sales situation where you're not supposed to wear your heart on your sleeve. This is the moment to wear your heart on your sleeve. If you're making a change, if you are making any kind of pivot, you're going to want to connect those dots more directly than your resume is going to let you. Now, an applicant tracking system isn't going to read that nuance, right? So if you're in a pivot mode, I'm already here to tell you that you need to be networking tenfold, right? Because applicant tracking systems are going to be looking at the words on the job description and the words on your resume and saying, what percentage matches? And when you do that, you get a pile full of candidates that have a lot of the same experience and a lot of the same words, right? And if you're a pivot candidate, you're not going to have those same words. So you need to be working your network, working with the people who can make introductions, right? To help see the in-between lines, the nuance of why you'd be, so great in that pivoted position. And a cover letter can really help you when you're making that formal introduction, putting your foot forward in that, to be able to explain that nuance. An applicant tracking system isn't going to read the cover letter, but that cover letter is actually going to be utilized throughout the life cycle of your resume, of your application, far more than just that initial reach out. These days, cover letters aren't even read until it's past that applicant tracking system point, right? And a lot of those, that 83% will tell us, I do read them, but I'm reading them at any given moment throughout a job search. Maybe it's not even until I've decided who I'm talking to, right? But these are the things that are going to help people say, oh, now I see it, right? I also want you to write a cover letter if you were referred or you have a connection, right? Because that's your opportunity to reinforce that connection, to put in town what you've learned, right? Get out of the job description and say, this is what, I have this connection to Morgan, who we had a great conversation. Morgan showed me the in-depth, the exciting things that you're working on, to be able to even further personalize your connection to an organization. Okay. You can skip it. you don't need to write a cover letter. Well, first and foremost, if the system doesn't accept one, please always look, because I've spent a lot of time with clients where we have gone and have like edited out a really cool cover letter. And then they come back to me and say, "Hey, Liz, I just went into the application and there isn't even a place to submit for one," which is a giant bummer. So always make sure, and this is actually one of the first things I will ask is, hey, is there a place before you start writing? Is there a place to submit it? Because a lot of applications now, if you're just clicking and submitting, they're not even going to give you a place to submit. So always check. But if you don't have anything to say beyond your resume, if this is a high volume application where it's a one-to-one of what you've done already, it's something that there isn't a lot of context in the job description. It's something where you're just trying to crank it out. Yeah, it's probably okay if you don't send a cover letter for that position, but you need to meet all of these other criteria first, right? And to make sure that, yeah, it's really going to be okay with this one if I don't submit it, right? If you're going after a position for, a seasonal, a part-time role at a retail location, for example, probably not going to need a giant cover letter for that. But if you're really excited about something, why not put a little pen to paper on it? All right. So cover letter's done. You had an interview. What comes next? Your thank you notes, right? This is your opportunity to reflect, right? We don't need to regurgitate everything that has happened, but this is your opportunity to kind of carry that conversation through. Who do you need to send a cover letter to? I want you to send a cover letter to everybody that you interviewed with, and individually. Do not send not cover letter, thank you note. I need you to send an individual thank you note to everyone you've interviewed with, right? We don't send group thank you notes. We're going to get into the when and all of that in a moment, but let's dig into what should go into that cover letter. So you landed that interview with Dana, and we want to appreciate her for that time. I actually think it's better to not just start with, "Hey, thanks," right in your body of your email. Put, if you have it right there in the subject line, "Thanks, Dana, still thinking about our call on Tuesday." That'll grab, right? That'll actually like pull in and say more than just like, "Thanks for the meeting. Let's see, what are we thinking about from that chat?" And then go right into it. "I've been thinking about our conversation and a point you made." So we're continuing the conversation through, right? "That line's been playing in my head since we spoke, and it's such a smart way to describe what a strong brand leadership does." Now, mind you, this is pretty generic because this is all like a hypothetical situation. But what I'm getting at here is I want you to pull back, have a callback that you're digging into that you want to kind of further elaborate on, right? I really enjoyed our discussion about Summits and Stage and how you're building alignment across creative and demand teams. It reminded me of why I love this kind of work. Show that enthusiasm, right? Connecting great ideas to measurable impact, having some fun in the process. Thanks again for the time, the insight, and the good humor. It was one of those interviews that felt more like a collaboration than a Q&A. Give them that feedback, right? Like, "Hey, I got so much out of this conversation." It goes beyond just like, "Thank you for the time. I look forward to hearing next steps." Something like this is going to add value to from the moment that you've walked out of that interview. It's going to layer in something more. It's going to show your appreciation, your enthusiasm, and it's going to help Dana see that, you want the job. Other things you could be adding in here is if Dana had asked you to send something across, if there was something in the conversation that you wanted to kind of, "Hey, I didn't get a chance to mention this." We've talked a lot about how a really solid thank you note can turn the tides on an interview. Julia's told this story in the past from her recruiting days where she had a candidate who was just didn't wow her in conversation, but in their thank you note brought the fire, and it totally turned her around. And Julia's feedback was, "Hey, you've got to bring that energy into your interview." So this can be a moment where you can turn the tide right? If you play your cards right in a thank you note, you can kind of realign or like get back on track if needed to. But this is where you can kind of keep those wheels turning from where that interview was. And it doesn't have to feel like a finality of thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing next steps. We want to add some more warmth to that. So let's talk about timing, right? I'm a big proponent of we don't need to race to our car and send out the thank you note immediately, right? I actually have people still ask me, like, should I send a formal handwritten thank you note? The world moves at a different pace now. Not for a first interview. It can be a nice move as you get further down to, in addition to that email, to send a thank you note toward the end of that interviewing process, to send a formal written letter, but it's not part of the formal, hey, we have a timeline we need to accomplish here. So when we're thinking about our thank you notes, you're going to want to send an email within 24 hours for sure. I like to give a balance between it being close enough where they didn't think you forgot to send it, but far enough where they've had time to think about something else. You want to stay top of mind, but give some breathing room, right? You want to give the interviewer a chance to think about something else and then come back to your conversation, but still remember your conversation enough where they're going to be able to reflect alongside of your email. You want to show that responsiveness, right? And you want to give them a moment to be able to kind of reflect back as well, right? So it's kind of a two-way street. So let's say your interview, if we're just to break it down time-wise, if you have an interview at 10 a.m., definitely you can still get a same day conversation or a same day thank you note out the door. This is where you're going to be able to send, I would say, like by 3 p.m., right? Same day, but give them a little breathing room. If you have a 3 p.m., ideally, you still want to send something in the same day. It depends on what their timeline's really looking at, but it is not a deal breaker if you have something sitting in their inbox at 9 a.m. the next day, right? Especially if you've like gone in and driven in for an interview, you're going to want to be able to, get home, put some thought to it, and then get that out. And then follow-ups, right? Your follow-ups can be the moment where you get re-seen, right? Follow-ups are a moment where in a lot of ways you're kind of trying to check back in, where you are bringing something together, letting them know you still exist, right? Hello, is anybody home, right? I wanted to check in about the director of marketing role. You mentioned you were hoping to make a decision by end of last week, and I wanted to touch base. Oops, see what I did here? There's that jest. We can axe that out. I wanted to touch base to see if there's been any update on timing. Cut the jest. I'm excited about the opportunity to contribute, and then you can add in a little bit here. Not a lot. We don't need a ton in here. The second they see your checking in on next steps, they're going to know what this email is about, right? They're going to say, I know I need to get back to this person. So we don't need to add a ton in here, but you do want to relay that enthusiasm and that sense of confidence. So no jests, axe the jests. Why should you follow up, right? If the timeline is passed, totally acceptable to follow up. If they said, hey, I'm going to get back to you on Friday and you get through the weekend, it is absolutely okay on Monday or Tuesday to reach back out and say, hey, checking in. If no timeline was stated, if you get through your interview, you get through the thank you notes, and you realize, wait a minute, I don't know when they were going to have a decision. It's absolutely okay to follow up. Think of it as that same timeline. Like, okay, let's pretend they were going to make a decision by the end of the week. Follow up the next week. If it's just been a while, you haven't followed up as diligently as maybe you wanted to, they haven't said anything, poke back out. This also goes for networking. This is not just in an interview process, but when you're in a networking and an informational conversation, it's been a while since you've touched base. This is a great, follow-ups are really important. Just reach back out. You have another offer, but you're still interested. I hear this one a lot. Man, it's a good problem to have, especially in today's market. But if you have another offer and this is the job that you really want, it is absolutely okay to say, "Hey, Dana, I know that you're still working through the process, but I wanted to give you an update that another offer has come through that is a bit compelling. I'm still very interested in this role at Summit, and I wanted to see where things stood." No, this isn't putting like pressure on her, but is maybe giving her a little clue of like, I'm really interested, but you are a human that needs to earn a paycheck. It's absolutely okay to follow up in that regard. Um, After an informational meeting, if somebody's made an introduction on your behalf after that informational and you had a great conversation, this is an opportunity to follow up with them and keep them clued in to what's going on. Or you've landed the job, follow up with all of the people that have helped you along the way, from those introductions to that, and maybe that first person you interviewed with, whoever it is, being able to kind of follow up to express, gratitude or closure on a situation is going to be really impactful. All right, so final thoughts. Write like a person, not a pitch, right? We want it to sound like you at the end of the day. And if you read it aloud and think it sounds robotic, it probably does. It's okay to use a text to talk on a first draft to kind of figure out, how would I say this to a person? Use tools to sharpen, not replace your message. A lot of today's examples were brought to you by ChatGPT. And as you can see, I already wanted to edit something out of them. So AI can help you brainstorm, tighten, paraphrase, and proofread, but at the heart of the message, it should always be yours. At the end of the day, writing with an AI should take probably about the same amount of time as if you're writing it yourself, but it's taking out some of the legwork of, I just need to get that first sentence down. And we have a lot of tools to help you do that in our community. You want to reuse or maybe refine some of your best lines. If you get really good feedback on something, you know, keep the good material. Like, a good comedian knows exactly how many seconds they need to pause before they get the laugh. You're going to learn that. You're going to learn what's working for you and what's not. Save those messages. Don't feel like you need to recreate the wheel when you find a formula that's working, not a template, a formula that's working for you. Okay. Join our community. So stay connected with us. Keep practicing. This process of writing can be challenging. It is an ongoing work of art, but I want to hear about your wins. I want to, hear more about what you've going on. So in our community, which I'll show you a link to in just a second, we have a community forum where you can absolutely share your examples, talk about what's working for you, share the feedback that you're getting, and join our monthly challenge to kind of strengthen those communication habits. This month in the community, we are talking all about these 4 types of notes, and each week we're covering a different note. So this week we've talked about introductions. Next week we are going to go into cover letters, and we're going to go even further in depth into these 4 different types of notes and how to be really effective with them. Our career transformation community is designed to help the transformation minded professional advance their career with authenticity and community, because job searching and career development shouldn't feel like you're shouting into a void. And Julia and I are here to absolutely help you accomplish that going into 2026 and beyond. We want you to thrive in your careers. And so by using the QR code on the slide, you will be able to find the link to that community. Join us, and we hope to see you in the conversation. My name is Liz Helton. Thank you so much for joining us for Just Ask Julia. We are going to start the Q&A session right after this. If you're watching the replay, make sure to use the link in the description below to sign up for a future session. Thank you so much, and we're rooting for you.